Hello everybody, Obadiah Cole here. Today, I got some more on how to learn more effectively. It turns out to be a pretty big topic and one that people aren't necessarily taught how to do, even though it can affect pretty much everyone's entire lives. So, let's get started, make a few new neural connections, and learn how to learn. The first thing to consider when figuring out how to learn is the brain and how it functions in terms of learning. About 2 weeks into a pregnancy, the human brain begins to develop. It continues on this path of development throughout all of adolescence, which lasts until the person gets to be in their mid to late 20s. There's a common misconception that after that point, the brain stops changing. It becomes stagnant and unable to learn more, which is not the case at all. You may already know this from maybe watching other videos, reading articles, anything like that, but you might not. But there's a concept called neuroplasticity, which basically essentially describes that the brain never stops changing, no matter how old you get, no matter the circumstance. Meaning that you can always learn anything, even if you don't think you can. The way the brain adjusts itself and continues its learning process is through a network of cells called neurons. These neurons are connected to one another by connectors called synapses, or synapses for those outside of the US. And each one of these synapses acts as a bridge, indicating a link between information in one part of the brain and another part of the brain. Whenever you encounter anything, some changes in these connections take place. I'd like you to imagine a big ball of tangled wires. This ball is so tangled, the wires are so intertwined that if you wanted to untangle it, it would take hours just to find a starting point. Now, while you could take the time and try to untangle it, you could also go the other route of making the wires more tangled. Adding wires, crossing the wires that already exist, tying them in ways that make it even more difficult to take apart the jumbled mess in front of you. Well, that jumbled mess represents your brain. The wires being the neurons and the tangles being the synapses between them. Like the wires, the connections in your brain can become more or less tangled. The synapses tend to form stronger bonds the more they're used, and consequently weaken when they go unused. Understanding this, we can hack the biology of the brain to improve how much we learn, how quickly we learn, and how long what we learn sticks with us. One way to apply this is to spread out our focus of what we're learning by learning from multiple sources and learning multiple topics, putting various bits of information together, connecting them. And even if this connection we make seems small, in our brains it ends up being humongous, because it's another connection formed, another synapse between neurons strengthened. I used this trick the other day. I was interested in learning more about a suggested physics phenomenon called the Casimir effect. I didn't know too much about it, only that it would potentially solve a problem that I'm working on. What I did was I went online and found everything I could on it. Articles, videos, weird websites from the 90s, lots and lots of research papers. I started reading everything, watching everything, taking in all that I could, even the repeating information, and with each different perspective, each telling of what it is, I understood a little bit more. Next, I looked at some related topics and did the same thing, gathering what piece of information I could about it. And at a certain point, all the little pieces began to connect, and they made more and more sense as I also began to connect it to ideas I know from just living my everyday life. You don't have to have some big problem you're working on or some huge, daunting topic to learn about. Even a little one works for you to use this on. Anything that you can think of that you can learn, you can apply this to. The next thing I'd like to bring up is basically what I just described, just a little bit more focused. You know that exploring multiple sources and making connection between bits of information can help, but sometimes you come across a bit of information that you have never come across before. You might be listening to someone or reading something, and there's a term that you don't know or that you don't understand fully. That bit of information acts as a sort of brick to the house that is the topic you're learning about. It's something that helps you to understand what you're learning more fully by giving you the insights of the little pieces that make up the whole. The best way to understand things better in this situation is to figure out what the little bit means, which at times can be as simple as just looking up a definition of a word. Some people might believe this to be obvious, but not everyone thinks about it or actually does it. Sometimes they're embarrassed that they don't know it, or they don't want to take the time to look it up. However, it is one of the greatest ways that you can understand anything better. This is another thing that I used when learning about the Casimir effect, and frankly, it's something I do whenever I learn anything. With the Casimir effect, whenever I came across a term that I thought I should know better, whether it's something I didn't understand at all, or I just thought it'd be good to reinforce its meaning, I made a note of it, ranging from virtual photons to Randall syndrome brain world. And once I finished going through the video or article or research paper, I went back to those notes and did a little research on what each of those things were, effectively building up the base of knowledge I needed to fully understand what I was trying to learn. Again, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can be as simple as figuring out the definition of the word angst. The last idea I'd like to cover and leave you with is one with a challenge. So many people find comfort in where they are. They're afraid to push themselves because they feel like they're not ready yet. Like they have to know more in order to move on to the next thing. I'm challenging you to challenge yourself. Because the last method I'm leaving you with is to jump in over your head. It's so extremely important to go beyond your current ability level. Otherwise, you'll just stay where you are. You'll never get better, you'll never improve. And sure, there are times when you might not be ready. But you'll never know unless you try. Getting out of one's comfort zone is what allows one to change, to be different than they were in the past. It's like you're trying to survive. You're dropped in the middle of the woods, no map, no phone, no way of knowing how close any other people are. You can choose to stay there, let fear take hold of you, and hope you'll be found before you die. Or you could start to venture around the area. Start looking for people. Start looking for some place to make a shelter. For food, for water, for whatever you might need so you can make it to see the next day. Learning something might not feel like a life or death situation. And many times it's not. But the idea behind it remains the same. You can only get better if you get past your comfort zone. Challenge yourself. Jump in over your head. I challenge you to do that. You can set the terms of what exactly you do. Maybe you could do a project. Build something. Maybe you're learning how to draw. So draw something you're not good at. maybe you're trying to figure out math, so you can do some really complicated problems or proofs. Maybe you could try learning about the Casimir effect. Anything that's beyond what you think you can do now. If it goes well, then congratulations, you've made it to the next thing. And you've shown yourself that you were ready. If it doesn't go so well, that's okay. You now know where your limits are right now. You can look at what things went wrong and learn to adjust. Figuring out how to do better. And you know what to shoot for in terms of what you challenge yourself with next. Whether you succeed or fail in this challenge, you win either way, as long as you accept it, which I really hope you do. Tell me about it in the comments below. Let me know what you do, what that challenge is, how it goes. I want to see you do better. I'd like to say that this method doesn't require anything complicated either, but if it is, then it helps. With that, we now know that we can strengthen the bridges in our brain by learning from as many different sources as possible and finding ways to connect various topics together. We know how to make our understanding of a subject more full by understanding the things that build it up, and we know how important it is to jump in over our heads. I know it's been almost exactly a year since the last time I posted a video. You're probably a little caught off guard by how much hair I have now, but I do have plans to make more. As I said a year ago, for the future I plan to have a video or two dedicated to improving memory, which I guess I did forget to do that after all. After that, I want to broaden topics and explain actual topics in various subjects, probably more relating to math and science since I'm more familiar with it, as well as do some interesting projects in the future. So let me know if there's anything specific you'd want me to do down in the comments below. Other than that, I hope I could help. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit that bell. I'm glad to have you here. Hope you have a good day. Bye.